My daughter sat across from me at the lawyer's office with her arms folded and a smirk that could curdle milk. She leaned over to her husband and whispered something that made them both laugh. Then she looked at me, and I will never forget what she said. "You can leave now, Dad. There's nothing here for you." Mom made sure of that. She was wrong. She was so completely, devastatingly wrong that when the lawyer read the next clause, her face collapsed like a building I once demolished on a job site in Thunder Bay. My name is Malcolm Frasier. I am 67 years old, and I spent 41 years as a demolition engineer in Ontario. I know how to take things apart. I know which wall to hit so the whole structure comes down clean. And on that Tuesday morning in a law office on Bay Street in Toronto, I took apart my daughter's entire world with one sentence I didn't even have to say myself. But I'm getting ahead of things. Let me start at the funeral. The service was at a cemetery in Mississauga, November. That particular kind of Canadian cold that doesn't just chill you, it insults you. The wind came off Lake Ontario like it had a personal grudge. My ex-wife Monique had been buried in her family's plot, next to her parents, under a headstone that probably cost more than my truck. I drove up in my 2011 F-150. The rust around the wheel wells told you everything you needed to know about my financial situation, or so my daughter Kendra believed. I parked at the far end of the lot because the closer spots were taken by German sedans and leased SUVs. I walked toward the gravesite. The crowd parted for me the way crowds part for someone they don't quite know what to do with. I was the ex-husband. I was the man Monique had divorced 8 years ago. To them, I was a footnote. Kendra intercepted me before I reached the second row. She was wearing a black Burberry coat and sunglasses even though it was overcast. Her husband, a man named Dominic who sold commercial real estate and talked about it the way some people talk about religion, stood behind her like a bodyguard. "The front is for immediate family," Kendra said. "I am your father," I almost said. But I didn't. I just nodded. "There's space near the maintenance shed," Dominic added. He pointed toward the back of the cemetery where they kept the lawnmowers. He didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. I walked to the back. I stood under a bare maple tree and watched them lower the woman I had loved for 35 years into the frozen ground. Monique and I divorced because of a lawsuit. A former business partner tried to claim half her real estate portfolio. Our lawyer told us a legal separation would shield my pension and her assets simultaneously. We signed the papers, we kept up appearances, but every Saturday she came to my apartment in Hamilton for coffee and butter tarts from the bakery at Lock Street. We never stopped being a team. Kendra didn't know that. Kendra only saw the numbers. After the service, Dominic walked over to me. He handed me a manila envelope. "From the estate," he said, like he was handing me a parking ticket. I opened it standing there in the cold. It was a notice to vacate. The apartment I'd been living in for 8 years, the one Monique quietly owned through a numbered company, was being liquidated as part of the estate settlement. I had 14 days. "The unit's in a hot market," Kendra said, appearing beside her husband. "We can get $700,000 for it easy, maybe more if we stage it right." She looked at me. "You understand, Dad, it's just business." I looked at the envelope. I looked at the grave. I looked at my daughter. "I understand perfectly," I said. I walked back to my truck. I sat in the cab with the engine running and the heat on. I didn't drive away immediately. I called a number I had memorized. "Murray," I said when the voice answered. "Malcolm, did they make their move?" 14-day eviction. 14-day eviction. At the graveside. There was a pause, then a sound like a dark laugh being swallowed. "That's cold even for them." "Are we ready?" "We've been ready for 6 months." Monique made sure of it. "Then let's begin." I hung up. I drove to a Tim Hortons on Dundas, ordered a large double-double and a plain bagel, and sat there for 2 hours thinking. Not about where I would live, about the numbers. $22 million. That was the total value of Monique's estate. Properties across the GTA, a cottage in Muskoka, commercial holdings, RRSPs, TFSAs, and liquid assets in 3 different accounts. But there were other numbers. Kendra didn't know. 600,000 in gambling debts Dominic had accumulated at Casino Rama and a private card room in Markham. 280,000 in credit card debt Kendra had buried across 7 cards to fund her lifestyle brand that had 1,200 followers and zero revenue, and a forged signature on a second mortgage against her in-laws' house in Brampton that could put her in a federal penitentiary. They thought they were inheriting an empire. They didn't realize they were standing on a sinkhole. The reading of the will took place at Murray Pendleton's office on King Street. Murray had been Monique's lawyer for 25 years. He was the kind of man who wore suspenders and meant it. His office smelled like old books and expensive discipline. I arrived early. I wore my work jacket, the one with the frayed cuffs and the faded logo of my old demolition company. I wanted to look exactly like what they expected, a tired, broke old man who had come to beg for scraps. Kendra and Dominic were already seated at the conference table. Dominic had a coffee from some place that charged $8 for a latte. Kendra was on her phone, scrolling through real estate listings. She was already spending the money. "I told you not to come," Kendra said without looking up. I pulled a folding chair from the corner and sat by the door. "I just want to hear what she wanted," I said quietly. Murray opened the leather binder. He read the assets. The house in Oakville valued at $3.8 million. The Muskoka cottage at $1.9. The Muskoka cottage at $1.9. The commercial properties, the investment accounts. Total estate, approximately $22 million. Dominic grabbed Kendra's hand under the table. "We're set, babe," he whispered. "We're finally set." Murray cleared his throat. "To my ex-husband, Malcolm Frasier, I leave nothing." Kendra clapped her hands together. One sharp, victorious clap. "There it is," she said. "In writing. You can go now, Dad." I sat still. I folded my hands. Murray turned the page. The sound was very loud in that quiet room. "However," Murray read. Kendra froze. Dominic's latte stopped halfway to his mouth. "However, all assets shall be transferred into the Monique Beaulieu Family Protection Trust, a discretionary trust established to preserve the estate. The beneficiary of the trust is Kendra Frasier Rossi." Kendra relaxed slightly. "Fine. A trust, whatever. How do I access it?" "You don't?" Murray said. "Excuse me. The trust is controlled by a sole trustee with absolute authority over all distributions. You cannot sell the properties. You cannot withdraw the funds. You cannot borrow against the assets. You receive only what the trustee decides to give you." Kendra stood up. "Who is the trustee? Is it you?" Murray took off his glasses. He pointed toward the back of the room. Toward the folding chair. Toward the folding chair. Toward me. "The sole trustee is Malcolm Frasier." The silence hit like a shockwave. I've set charges on concrete pillars and felt the pause before the blast. This was that pause. Kendra turned to look at me. Her face went through about 7 expressions in 3 seconds, none of them flattering. "Him," she whispered. "The man who clips coupons for cat food?" "That is correct," Murray said. "Your father controls every dollar, every property, every account. If you want to buy groceries, Miss Frasier Rossi, you will need his written authorization." Dominic slammed his fist on the table. "This is insane. We'll challenge it. We'll have him declared incompetent. He's a 67-year-old demolition worker who lives in a basement apartment." I stood up. I buttoned my work jacket. I walked to the table. I didn't slouch anymore. I sat in Murray's chair when he offered it. "Let's talk about competence," I said. I opened the binder to a tab marked Liabilities. "Dominic, it says here you owe $400,000 to a private card room in Markham. The kind of place that doesn't send polite reminder letters." I pulled another sheet. "And Kendra, 7 maxed credit cards. A second mortgage on your in-laws' house that they didn't sign for. That's fraud, sweetheart. That's a criminal code offense." Kendra collapsed into her chair. Dominic went pale. As trustee, I said, I have a fiduciary duty to protect these assets. Paying off gambling debts and funding Instagram content about luxury living does not qualify as prudent distribution. Dad, please, Kendra stammered. Dominic owes those people in Markham. They said they'd hurt us. You have to release the funds. Denied, I said. You can't do this, Dominic screamed. It's her inheritance. It's my decision, I corrected him. Meeting adjourned. I walked out. Murray followed me to the elevator. That went well, Murray said. It's just phase 1, I replied. She's going to fight. She's going to get desperate. And desperate people do exactly what you expect them to do. Over the next week, I watched from a distance. I moved into a modest hotel near the Hamilton GO station. My phone rang constantly. I didn't answer. Kendra went live on social media that night. She sat on the floor of Dominic's parents' house, wearing a plain sweatshirt, no makeup. My father is a monster, she told her followers. He stole our inheritance. He's using it to control us. We're victims. The donations started pouring in. People sent her $50, $100. A GoFundMe appeared. I watched it and drank my Tim Hortons. Go ahead, I thought, dig deeper. Then the lawsuit arrived. Kendra filed to have me removed as trustee. The affidavit claimed I had dementia. A doctor I'd never met signed a statement saying he'd examined me and found cognitive decline. I called Murray. She hired a quack, Murray said. A doctor in Scarborough who'll sign anything for $3,000. I'll submit to an independent evaluation immediately, I said. Today, if possible. But Kendra wasn't waiting for courts. The following Tuesday, I heard a knock at my hotel room door. It wasn't polite. It was the kind of knock that expects the door to open or come off its hinges. I opened it. Kendra stood there with tears streaming down her face. Behind her was the doctor from the affidavit, a nervous man holding a clipboard. Behind him were 2 police officers and 2 paramedics with a stretcher. Officer, Kendra sobbed, my father is a danger to himself. He has weapons. He threatened to hurt us. The officer looked at me. Sir, we have a report and a doctor's assessment. We need to take you in for an evaluation. I raised my hand slowly. I'm drinking tea in a hotel room, I said. Does that seem dangerous? The doctor stepped forward. Officer, Mr. Frasier has a documented history of paranoid episodes. He doesn't recognize me. That's the dementia progressing. I've never met you in my life, I said calmly. One of the paramedics moved in. He was a big man, calm and professional. He put his hand on my shoulder. Sir, we need to take you in. It's procedure. I looked at his name tag. It said Fenton. He gave my shoulder the slightest squeeze. This was my man. They strapped me to the stretcher. Kendra let out a theatrical sigh of relief. Thank you, officers. You saved him. They wheeled me out. Down the service elevator, through the lobby, into the ambulance. The doors closed. The siren started. We drove 2 blocks. Then the siren stopped. Fenton stood up. He pulled down the window shade. He smiled. Got it all, he said, tapping the body camera on his vest. Audio and video. The doctor claiming he treated you for years. Your daughter lying about weapons. Everything. In the front seat, the doctor was already dozing off, having accepted the bottle of water Fenton's cousin, the driver, had offered him. It had contained something to help him sleep. We drove to a safe house in Etobicoke. Murray was waiting with a notary. By midnight, the evidence was processed and filed with the Crown. The next morning, I was free. My daughter thought I was sedated in a private facility somewhere north of Barrie. She celebrated. She announced on social media that her father was finally getting the help he needs. Then she organized an estate sale at the Oakville house. I found out through the security cameras I had access to. She was putting price tags on Monique's paintings. She was selling the Canadiana collection, the Inuit soapstone carvings Monique had spent decades acquiring. She was selling my dead wife's legacy to strangers for cash. I let her set it all up. I let her invite the buyers. I let her stand on the stage and feel like a queen. I attended the sale wearing a mask. Kendra had made it a masquerade theme because of course she had. I blended in perfectly. When the centerpiece came up for auction, a group of 7 sketched that Monique had bought at a Sotheby's auction in Montreal, and that was designated in the trust as a cultural asset to be donated to the Art Gallery of Ontario. I raised my hand. 200,000, I said. The room went quiet. Sold, Kendra said, grinning. I walked to the stage. I removed my mask. The color drained from her face like water from a cracked foundation. Dad, she whispered. Every item sold tonight is cataloged property of the trust, I said into the microphone. This sketch is designated as a protected cultural donation. Selling it privately violates the Cultural Property Export and Import Act. Every buyer here tonight is in possession of stolen goods. The room emptied in minutes. People dropped paintings and ran for their cars. Kendra screamed. Dominic tried to run. He made it to the back door before the RCMP officers Murray had called walked through the front. They were arrested. Fraud, theft, over 5,000, trafficking in cultural property. Dominic's face hit the marble floor I'd installed 23 years ago when this house was young and my family was whole. I stood alone in the empty ballroom. The champagne was still fizzing in abandoned glasses. I looked at the walls. I remembered when Kendra was 6 and drew a picture of our family on the drywall with crayon. Monique had wanted to paint over it. I convinced her to frame it instead. I found it that night. It was still in the hallway upstairs, behind a door. Kendra never bothered to open. A crayon drawing of a stick figure family holding hands under a yellow sun. She'd written, "My family," in wobbly letters across the top. I sat on the hallway floor and held it and didn't move for a long time. The trial was brief. The evidence was overwhelming. Kendra's lawyer tried the sympathy angle. A grieving daughter driven to madness by a controlling father. It almost worked. The jury looked at her in her soft gray cardigan and saw a broken girl. Then Murray played the video. Monique had recorded it 2 days before she died. She sat in the Muskoka cottage wrapped in a blanket, an oxygen tank beside her. Her voice was thin, but her eyes were iron. "My name is Monique Beaulieu," she said. "If you are watching this, I am gone. And if you are watching this, I am gone. And if you are watching this, my daughter has done something unforgivable." She paused. "Kendra, I know you changed my medication. I know you swapped my blood thinners for sugar pills. I tasted the difference 3 weeks before I died. I had them tested at a lab in Kingston. The report is with my lawyer." The courtroom went silent. Kendra stopped breathing. "You did it because you needed the inheritance before your creditors closed in. You thought if I died sooner, you'd get the money in time. But you were wrong." Monique leaned toward the camera. "I gave the money to your father because he is the only person strong enough to tell you no. I love you, Kendra. But I can't let you destroy yourself, and I can't let you think you got away with killing me." The screen went black. Kendra screamed that it was fake. She lunged toward the witness stand. The bailiffs restrained her. The jury watched the mask fall away completely. The charges were amended to include attempted murder. Kendra received 12 years. Dominic got 7. I visited her once, 3 months after sentencing. The Grand Valley Institution for Women south of Kitchener. She sat behind the glass in her orange jumpsuit. She looked small. "Why?" she asked. "Because your mother asked me to. She hated me. She loved you enough to stop you from killing yourself with her money. Send me something. Anything. My commissary account is empty." I slid a deposit receipt under the glass. $50. 50, she whispered. 50 a month. That's what you get. Not a cent more. Learn to budget. Learn what things cost. Learn that a cup of coffee isn't $8. It's $1.75 at Tim Hortons, and it tastes better. She stared at me with eyes that could have burned holes in the glass. I stood up. "I love you, Kendra, but I'm done funding your destruction." I walked out. I didn't look back. I drove back to the Oakville house. I went to the conservatory, the glass room at the back where Monique grew her orchids. Kendra never came in here. She said the humidity ruined her hair. I knelt on the stone floor. I reached under the old cedar potting bench and pressed the knot in the wood that wasn't a knot. A panel in the floor clicked open. A small safe, built into the foundation, installed by me 30 years ago. I spun the dial. Our wedding date. The lock opened. Inside were two things: a stack of letters tied with blue ribbon and a rolled tube of architectural drawings. The letters were from Monique. 10 years of letters she never sent. She wrote about missing me, about the empty side of the bed, about watching me fix things in the apartment on Saturday mornings and wanting to ask me to come home, but knowing that if she did, Kendra would drain us both dry. I read them all. I sat on the floor of that humid room and cried until the orchids probably thought it was raining. Then I opened the blueprints. They were plans for this house, redesigned. The ballroom was labeled Community Kitchen. The library was Adult Learning Center. The bedrooms were divided into transitional housing units. At the bottom, in Monique's careful drafting hand, was the title: The Malcolm and Monique Frasier Center for New Beginnings. A note was attached. Take the money, Mel. Got this place. Rip out the silk curtains and the marble countertops. Build something that matters. Build it for me. Build it for us. That was 4 years ago. The house on Lakeshore Road doesn't look like a mansion anymore. The iron gates stand open from 7 in the morning until 10 at night. The ballroom serves 300 meals a day to veterans and single mothers and teenagers who age out of foster care with nowhere to go. I'm not just the donor. I'm the handyman. I fix the toilets on Mondays. I teach basic carpentry on Wednesdays. I make coffee for the overnight staff at 5 in the morning because nobody else gets the industrial percolator to work right. I was standing at the top of the driveway last Tuesday, checking a mailbox the way I always do, when a bus pulled up at the stop on Lakeshore. The doors opened. A woman stepped off. She was thin. Her hair was shorter than I remembered. She wore a plain jacket and carried a clear bag with a few belongings inside. Kendra. Paroled after 4 years. Good behavior. She stood at the bottom of the hill. She looked up at the house. She saw the sign over the entrance. She saw the children playing on the lawn where Dominic used to park his Audi. Then she looked at me. I didn't wave. I didn't call out. I just stood there. She took one step toward the gate. Then she stopped. She looked at the building, at what it had become. She looked at the volunteers carrying boxes of donated winter coats through the front door. She looked at the old woman sitting on the porch, drinking coffee and laughing with a staff member. I saw her understand something. She didn't belong here, not because she was banned, because she hadn't earned it. She lowered her head. She turned around. She started walking down Lakeshore Road toward the bus stop, toward the city, toward whatever minimum wage life was waiting for her. She had $50 in her pocket and a record that would follow her for the rest of her life. I watched her go until she disappeared around the bend. Murray walked out onto the porch behind me. "Who was that?" he asked. "Just someone figuring out which direction is forward." I went back inside. I had work to do. There was a leaky pipe on the 3rd floor, and I'd promised a 10-year-old boy I'd teach him how to calculate the load-bearing capacity of a bridge made out of popsicle sticks. I spent 41 years calculating how much pressure a structure could take before it crumbled, but I never learned the most important lesson until it was almost too late. Sometimes the hardest thing a father can do is let his child fall so she can finally learn how to stand on her own. Money is just a tool. In the hands of the greedy, it tears families apart. In the hands of the purposeful, it becomes a roof over someone's head and a warm meal on a cold night. True legacy isn't what you leave behind in a bank account. It's what you build with your own hands for people who need it most. If you believe that sometimes tough love is the only way to save the ones you love, hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels.